In the previous video, we have discussed the engagement letter and the sections that are recommended to include before you sign an agreement with your client. In this video, I wanted to highlight some extra clauses and a few tips that I highly recommend you to include in engagement letter, and we'll also have a look at the example of engagement letter that we can provide to your clients. Let's now have a look at the extra clauses that I highly recommend for you to use, or at least to consider before you sign an agreement or engagement letter with your clients. So, of course, the first major tip is when you write an engagement letter, would it be for sole trader or partnership, would it be for self-assessment or the limited company, make sure that you have separate engagement letters for each business entity. Now let's go have a look at the clauses that I highly recommend. I put in 10 clauses. The first one is errors and delays and data provision. So if the client doesn't provide you with accurate data, or it's constantly delays with sending you information, that of course you need to put a clause that you have no responsibility if information provided late. That should actually follow after the clause where you say, okay, there are clearly defined timelines for your due dates, and you define which are due dates are for your client, but expected deadlines that you are hoping to receive the documents by. And if you have not received the documents by that time agreed, you have no responsibility over penalties, over interest charges or tax office, and so on. So that's very important. This first and the third clause go together, and therefore you take no responsibility either for the accuracy of details provided, or you don't take responsibility for the late submission of the filing. And it's very important, especially if to do with payroll. If you're a bookkeeper, most likely will be doing the payroll submissions. So make sure that you put these clauses into the documents. Next thing is connected lost and damaged documents. Again, I highly recommend you to put this clause in. So if the documents were not clear, for example, receipts are almost unreadable, or information is not provided at all. For example, the client says, well, it's burned by fire, damaged in the laptop is stolen, lost, there is no backup. Then you have no responsibility if there would be a court judgment. So you'll have clear explanation, and it's written in your engagement letter. So next connected clause is additional charges for correcting errors or incorrect data sent. So here you would have a definition what is incorrect data. So for example, it's inaccurate information sent to you for sales or purchase invoices or for payroll, depending on the services you're providing, and additional charges that you expect to correct these errors. And absolutely normal to put this into engagement letter as additional clause, because you don't have to take the responsibility on behalf of your clients. Next clause is 4, protection clause of 2 management directors or 2 partners in partnership. It may be that they are sending you information which is not agreed between them, and it doesn't make any sense. One person says one thing, another person says another thing, and it's not consistent. Wherefore, you have a right in the clause in your engagement letter that you have a right to wait until information received is consistent and confirmed by both parties, so you can do your work properly. And connected to that, if the client makes your job difficult, clause, you have the right to step down immediately. Of course, you would explain to your clients that due to this and this terms of business, or due to atmosphere or environment, or a lack of provision of accurate data, you're not able to perform your job properly, and it makes your work with the client very difficult. Perhaps it's harassment or whatever. You can always include this clause and step down immediately. You don't have to work in the difficult situations, toxic clients. Clause 6, right to correct minor errors. So For anything small, and you have to define how small the errors are, you don't need permission to keep asking for something very small to be corrected. Example would be perhaps FX rates. If you send invoices to different countries, and FX rate difference between what clients have paid based on the FX rate, let's say the local bank and xe.com, which is used by Xero, for example, you may be able to post a journal or may be able to correct it yourself without extra confirmations and so forth. Now we're talking about oral advice is not to be relied on. So if you are providing any advisory to your clients as well, make sure you have disclosed that they cannot use your advice over the phone. Only the written confirmation after a call would be legally used as reliable information. Mentioned before in the previous video, liability cap. So although we are all covered by business insurance, would it be bookkeeper or accountant, we are not allowed by business insurance regulations to tell any information from our contract by rules, but we can always put information, say liability cap of 3 times of VAT amount, 3 times of yearly annual services provided, whatever you feel comfortable, but make sure you put this information in so it puts liability, how much the client can actually sue you for. Lost and damaged documents already mentioned. Last but not least, describe how the work will be carried out. I thought that would be a very important topic if you're working on the site with a client, so make sure you clearly define how many days you agree to work, the working hours, perhaps you even agree on travel expenses. Please watch my other video about online and on-site work. There are some advantages and disadvantages which I've discovered through my work, so make sure you watch this video as well. Now let's look at the example of the engagement letter. So here is an example of engagement letter. As we've seen before, we have a proposal date, client information and address, followed by engagement letter with the practice name and the client name. Then we go ahead and look at the scope of services. So as described in previous video, we'll put the information that we are going to carry out in respect to responsibilities. Limitation of liability as well. So it's important to say what we are not responsible for if the data is provided inaccurate or it's late or it's damaged. So we need to make sure we cover ourselves and do not take responsibilities for that. Communication with the client. How do we communicate? Would it be via email? Would it be in-person meetings that you might have every quarter, so forth, yearly meetings? And then if there is any designated person that you have to communicate with. Now we go into agreement of terms, data protection, commencement of engagement, include, of course, the anti-laundry checks or due diligence checks, whatever you need to perform, or perhaps a credit rating check if you have certain services related to that. Then, of course, the period of engagement, if it's a short-term, say 12 months on a roll basis or over 12 months, then you need to specify this, and also the timing where you or your client can give you a notice, or you give a notice if you decide to leave or stop the engagement of this service. Confirmation of agreement. They define the proposed variation of termination as mentioned before, so make sure you have it as an agreement. If the engagement letter was signed, you have 14 days to terminate the agreement without any potential charges. However, say after 14 days, if the client terminates the agreement, what charges do they need to take into consideration? Any digital signing, so as good as paper, but make sure that you put it in the contract, in the engagement letter. Any consumer cancellation rights, so of course the consumer has rights to cancel. And again, cancellation period of 14 days. For any reason, after 14 days, they accept there will be charges. for the time that proportionally that was used. Exercise right of cancellation, would it be informed by a written? So highly recommend to have a written cancellation sent to you or email attachment. Effective cancellation, so you have to describe what will happen. So we will reimburse you for the proportion of the fees, and followed by purpose and scope and retainer, where you clearly define the service summary, how much will it cost, how it will be paid, where and which bank account will be used. If there are late payments, the surcharge that will be added to the bills. Any additional services, you also need to define if the client asks you something which is not been agreed in the engagement letter, it will be cost that much, and the quote will be sent to you for agreement. If there's ongoing service, that the engagement letter needs to be rewritten, so and agreed once again. And acceptance of terms, where you outline that please review terms and conditions of the business, and you happy with engagement letter and terms and conditions, and please sign accordingly this engagement letter to begin the service. I hope this video was useful. Please watch my other videos and subscribe to my channel. Any questions, I'll be happy to help and answer. Please send me a message. Thank you very much, and please watch my other videos.